Hello and welcome to Screencast 3 for Writing Like a Scientist for our Year 7 project. And this screencast we're going to be talking about formality of writing. Now this is going to be very important for this particular task because it's in your writing criteria. But don't think of it only for this task. Writing in a more formal and academic way is going to be very useful for you throughout your school life. We're starting in Year 7, but by the time you get to the IGCSE and the IB, hopefully you will have developed the writing style which is formal and will be which will be able to be and using specific language for the topic that you're talking about. Now, if your essay is supporting in terms of formality of language, it means you'll be using informal expressions, which really we mean language that we use with our friends. This includes slang and abbreviations, and I don't expect to see this in this essay, in this proposal. For exceeding, you'll be using academic English and formal writing conventions throughout your proposal. So the purpose of this presentation is to tell you how to be a little bit more formal and academic in your writing, and hopefully I'll give you some suggestions on how you can do this. So firstly, we shouldn't be using contractions. This means not using don't, won't, it's, shouldn't. Now here, the apostrophes have been used to shorten the words. So don't, if we're writing it in formal English, should be do not. Won't becomes will not. It becomes it is. And shouldn't becomes should not. We should write the words out in full. It's just what we do when we're writing more formally. However, abbreviations are okay to show possession. So for example, if we said Mark's phone, it would be Mark apostrophe S, phone. And this shows possession. And in the example below, I've said the scientist's proposal. Well, that's okay because it's showing that the proposal belongs to them. So we can use apostrophes to show possession, but we should not use apostrophes to shorten words. The second piece of advice is no abbreviations. So when you're using Messenger or Instagram, you may use abbreviations such as LOL for laugh out loud, or BFF, best friends forever. We can't use abbreviations like that in our writing. There are some exceptions. So for example, if we're using a unit of measurement. So if we want to talk about the length of something, we may use km for kilometers, m for meters, and mm for millimeters. We may use for weight, we may use g for gram, kg for as well. And it's okay in this case to use the abbreviation, but that's only for units of measurements. We may also do it in terms of an organization that we have previously introduced. So for example, it was recommended by the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization. This is commonly known as UNESCO, and we need to write the name of the organization first, then open brackets, put the abbreviation, then close the brackets. And we can do this for organizations which have a particularly long name or is commonly known as something else. So for example, in the UK, we might use the National Health Service or the NHS. So we need to write down National Health Service, brackets, NHS, close brackets, and then future uses of NHS, we can just use the abbreviation. However, I do not want to see you use E.G. for example, write, for example, comma, as we talked about in the connectives lesson. We should not put ... or etc. This means that we're giving a list of reasons or potential factors or potential causes and effects. So we can just say some potential causes are this, this, and this, among others, full stop. And this shows that we had other examples or other specific things that we could have talked about, but we chose not to. Or we could say the list of factors include, or there is a list of factors including ... 1, 2, and 3. The word including means there are probably more which you have not mentioned, and the reader will already know that. Do not use the shortened form of government, so GOV or GOVT, write government in full. And the same for including. We should also try to avoid using personal pronouns in our work. So these are words like I, my, you, your, we, our. If we use it once or twice, it's not the end of the world, and it's not a big problem. But we want to, as much as possible, try to avoid using them. So, by removing the personal pronouns, we're making our work more objective. This means it's based on facts rather than opinions. Saying I think or we think, that's your opinion. Whereas if we take those words out, it makes our work sound more neutral, that you're using evidence given by other people and not yourself. It will therefore become more scientific because, as we know, scientific research comes about in terms of things being proven, and it's not about opinion. So by taking out the personal pronouns, we're making our work sound more objective. We can have this: we think the discovery of this will cause this. But if we just said the discovery of may lead to, that would be a much better way of writing it. We're no longer giving our opinion, and we're stating it as a fact. This could happen. If we say we think that, it's too much based in the language makes it sound like it's just your opinion. Writing it, the discovery of this could lead to that, makes our reasoning just that little bit stronger. And we will explore the desert to find out. Well, for this particular project, we know that you are the people doing the exploring. We already know that. You are proposing it. You've said we will go to this place. Therefore, just make the object of the sentence the new subject. So the exploration of this will uncover. We know that you are doing the exploring, so you don't need to tell us that again. Changing explore to exploration is a more academic way of writing. We're using the noun instead of the verb, and this allows us to be more precise and more concise in what we're saying. If we remember when we talked about things previously, good academic writing is not always using big, long sentences. It's being concise in what we're saying, using as few words as possible to give across our message. By changing verbs and adjectives into nouns can allow us to do that. It also allows us to remove the personal pronoun. We should also avoid using slang and idioms in our work. This is super informal, and it's what we use for friends in spoken conversation, but should not be found anywhere near academic essays, paragraphs, or in this case, a scientific proposal. So you may have heard the expression, it's raining cats and dogs, to mean it's very heavy rain. Now this would be an example of an idiom. If we wanted to say something similar in academic language, there are torrential downpours of rain during the monsoon season, sounds much more academic, much more professional, as what you should be writing. Cats and dogs is an informal expression. Why it may sound quite good, it's just not the style of writing we want. We could say it would be really cool if we find, but cool is such a super informal word which could mean many different things. And it doesn't have a specific meaning. It's super informal and friendly. So we'd want to change that to something like the discovery of this would be beneficial to the scientific community. It's much more precise, much more academic, a little bit more complex, and gives our work the appropriate tone for what we want. Now, as we talked about in Screencast 1, connectives are a great way of linking our sentences together. And if you haven't seen video 1, I suggest you go back to watch that. But as we said, we shouldn't start sentences with and, but, so, also, then. And if you have, go back through your work now and edit that. So we talked about and being replaced with furthermore, comma, or in addition, comma, being a much better way and a much more formal way of writing. And it links our sentences together nicely. Same with but being replaced with however, so being replaced with therefore, comma, and so it goes on. So please, if you have used words like and, but, so, next, to start the sentence, please go back and change that. I'm not saying you cannot use these words in the middle of sentences. Often it's okay and normal to do that. What I am saying though is you should not use them as the first word. So if you've used this in the middle of a sentence, no problem, keep it there. But if it's the first word, please go back and then change that. The sixth point is using academic and specific language, which we looked at in Screencast 2. And we want to avoid using words like things, stuff, and be much more specific about, is it materials or resources or equipment or instruments that we're using. So we definitely should be doing that. And if you've used words like good, bad, beauty, ugly, these words might not be specifically what you'd like to say. So go back through and think, how can I make these general words that I'd say with my mates, or if I was talking about this topic with my mum and dad, what words might I use? But then think, is that what my science teacher would expect? Or is that what a scientific body or a grant-giving organization which you're trying to get money from and you're trying to impress, are these really the words that you would use? And then try to think, what's more scientific and what's a bit more formal? Go back through and check and change your work now if you've made those mistakes. Finally, we can use the words this or these to avoid repetition. In academic writing, we don't want to repeat large strings of text again and again. What we can do is we can say this or these to refer to the idea of the previous sentence. And in the paragraphs you looked at in class, you'll see that the example paragraph I gave you did this. The first example here is, we're talking about the temperatures. And we talked about the difference in the daytime temperature of about 45 degrees and at nighttime being about 0. And the next sentence starts with this, and this is referring to the difference of temperature. If we started the sentence, the difference in temperature will present numerous challenges, that can sound a bit clumsy, but by saying this, we've reduced it to one word which precisely talks about the last sentence and allows us to be more concise in what we're writing. In the next paragraph, we talked about the school hiring an experienced expedition leader and that they were going to do classes. So instead of saying the classes that we could say the classes that will be run by the consultant to start the sentences, but we've used here 7 or 8 words that we don't need to. So just saying these sessions links it nicely to the sentence before, is more concise and avoids repeating information. And then I've talked about passing a fitness check and medical checks to make sure that the students are in strong enough physical condition to undertake the trip. Again, using this to link it to the sentence before is a very strong way to do this. So how can we be a bit more academic? Well, we don't use contractions. Write the words in full. No abbreviations or idioms. That's okay to speak to friends, but we should not be using that in formal dialogue. Use connectives where you can, avoid using personal pronouns, and try to use words like this to avoid repetition of key phrases. Good luck in completing your proposal.